bottom. They do an annual Christmas sing along and Christmas choir thing. It's really nice.
That's fun. I feel like your wife would be into that.
She does. She's sprechen the Deutsch.
She does. Yeah, and she can sing 99 Luftballons in actual German.
It's true. Yeah, that's a fact.
Nobody she did that. That's when I fell in love with her. That was the moment.
Oh, back off.
Okay, you guys have breeded. I don't think she's leaving.
I think she's sticking around now.
Yep.
No, this is when they go feral.
Go lesbian too.
Yeah, exactly.
She's got your seed. She has no use of you now.
That's it. Yeah.
Why would she have use for any man?
This is the logical conclusion of fourth wave feminism.
Just like Rush Limbaugh predicted.
As soon as they get your seed, dear listeners, they will abandon you.
Gross.
The Voice? Do you not like The Voice?
No, it was good. It was good. It was a good Rush Limbaugh impression.
No, it was the idea of your seed that made me say gross.
Oh, gotcha.
Because I know where that seed comes from.
Where?
Ick.
Tacos, mostly, I think is probably what it's made out of.
I will say the impression that I get the most reaction to by far is the Rush Limbaugh one. Number one, because I don't think a lot of people do a Rush Limbaugh impression.
And
number two, because whether or not people are conservative, there is a large group of people for whom had to listen to a lot of Rush Limbaugh in their dad's car. And that is just like a voice that they have weird nostalgia for. Even if they hate Rush Limbaugh and they've come to despise everything that he ever said.
It reminds them of sitting in car with dad in high school.
Yeah.
For me, it's mom. It was Rush Limbaugh and then Dr. Laura Schlesinger, and I hate that woman.
My father, throughout my entire middle school and high school experience, listened to nothing but marching band music on the way to school. Nothing. He will listen to oldies. KOMA in Oklahoma was the go-to station in the afternoon and evening, but in the morning it was nothing but the kind of music you'd hear in old World War II propaganda videos as the carriers go towards Japan. Yeah, exactly. Just nothing but that.
You know what's horrible? Is that KR301, the oldies station in LA, is now playing 80s and 90s music.
That is terrifying.
Isn't that awful?
That is terrifying.
Yeah, it used to be like doo-wop type shit, and now it's Oingo Boingo and the Chili Peppers. It's so painful.
But isn't that weird that like also mainstream culture died? So like now the Chili Peppers are like still relevant because they were like one of the last bands that happened when radio and MTV still mattered. And so they've kind of like had this longer half-life than anybody else. Like we make one new pop star every 3 years.
I know. It's true. This Chappell Roan chick was big this weekend at ACL.
She was.
Everyone is talking about her right now. I hate that song though.
Pink Pony Club?
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't know what hot to go means. Like I feel like such an elderly, but
see, I think this is why I'm going to have an easier time aging than most other people, because I have never been hip or cool at any point. There was no point where you would look at me, young Heaton, clutching my skateboard and backwards hat and thought, wow, he's really with it with the youth. I've never fucking had that feeling. And so it's a lot easier for me to just let go of that and go, oh, now I'm weird in an old way as opposed to a young way.
Is there a band that like now we are at the prime age where bands from our youth will do a big tour that is directly aimed at us reliving our 20s and teen years? Is there any band like that if they said like, oh, they were coming through?
Oh, I would drop everything to go watch Bare Naked Ladies. That was my favorite high school band. I loved Bare Naked Ladies. Yeah. Okay. Just listen to all of their albums ad nauseum. Back when you would listen to albums, on a CD
wonder
player.
they gotta have.
Yeah,
they got to be touring.
I saw them in New York several years ago. I don't think they're together anymore, but I don't know a lot about their personal lives. I don't think it got acrimonious or anything.
They're Canadian, so it's probably passive aggressive,
right?
Whatever it is.
Yeah. You're probably right about that. No, they would do that. And if we're doing 20s, I feel like Ben Folds and Sufjan Stevens played an impacted role in my 20s, and I think they're still performing.
That's
are they
some
not?
sad boy shit.
Ben Folds was actually here.
Yeah.
I want to say last year.
Although Sufjan Stevens, though, did what I think a lot of really creative people do, which is they eventually get bored with the fundamentals. They get so good at it, it becomes boring to them. And so there was this weird period where he just had fucking weird discordant music. And I was like, I'm out. Sorry. Like, I don't understand the structure well enough to go on this magical journey with you into shit music.
I have a deal with my cousin, the one that you guys met, Heidi, that the minute the Spice Girls announce a tour, we stop what we're doing, we buy tickets, and we fly to wherever we need to fly.
There's been rumors that was the case because the money is
she's a pain in the ass.
the money is so big. Like Oasis got together, which that has been like the British reunion that never would happen and now will happen because the money is big enough. And I mean, the Spice Girls would be huge.
Posh is the holdout. Mrs. Beckham doesn't need the cash.
Now, isn't there like there's some fight? I don't know. Every once in a while, I'll get pushed to a British tabloid, and there will be very effectively written headlines in the corner with big pictures that I will wind up getting sucked into, and it's usually about British celebrity drama that I barely understand. But there was something about the Spice Girls, it being like a fight between Scary Spice and somebody else, that there was like a bad, I don't know, it was some Instagram comment.
Well, so Lady Bex turned 50
And they were
earlier
all
this year.
together.
They were all there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if they're all partying together, I think they just don't want to do the tour, at least not yet. They keep teasing us, so I do think there's a chance this is going to happen, which is why Heidi and I have decided that like if it's in London, we go to London. If it's in Africa, we're going on safari. Like I don't care, we're going.
So I'm trying to think of whether or not I should say the band. There's a 90s band that...
Why are you not saying their name? Are you friends with them?
Yeah, are you embarrassed of your bad taste?
No. I'm friends with people who are friends with them and was privy to stories about a possible reunion.
Okay.
And it was shockingly stupid why stuff wouldn't come together. There's like a lot of money on the table, and just it hasn't come together for really, really dumb reasons.
Well, you don't have to
For
tell
really
us the
stupid
backstory to tell us the band. What's the band? Come on. Also, no
Let's
one
just
cares.
say that they're
Now you know how it feels, Justin.
not out of sync.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It's Matchbox 20.
No, yeah, it was in sync. It was in sync, and the reason why it hasn't come together is not for the reasons that you would think. It is one of the other people that you would not think would hold everything up. That is the hold up to everything.
They did
for
just
very, very
do
dumb
a
reasons.
movie together. They did some soundtrack for some movie very
Trolls.
recently.
No, that was the reason why it was. Everybody thought they were going to do a big reunion.
Yeah.
Because Justin Timberlake was in Trolls 2 or 3, I can't remember.
It's like Trolls 15 at this point.
But the whole point of the movie is Justin Timberlake's character has to get back together with his old band.
Oh, okay.
And the old band is played by NSYNC. And so everybody was like, oh, this is the Grease the Wiz. This is around the time that the Eras Tour is happening. And it's like, oh, this is brilliant. Like, they're going to launch this with this thing. All the parents are going to be taking their kids to it. All the moms are going to remember that they love NSYNC music. And now they're going to do a big tour, a big nostalgia tour, and they're going to cash in. No plans. There were no plans at all around it. And then my friend who, is tangentially tied to them was like, all right, well, can I shop some of this around to see whether or not it makes sense? And they're all like, yeah, sure, yeah. And then it just didn't come together for very dumb reasons.
That's a shame.
I've told you my
would be
meatloaf
fun.
story on the program, right? Am I backtracking if I do that?
No.
Have I? Okay. Yeah. So
Of course you have a meatloaf story.
my old boss Kennedy, lovely woman, good friends with her, just texted her yesterday. My old boss,
I can brag about it.
when I was on Fox Business, she'd been an MTV VJ,
That's how I know.
as they are called.
Yes.
Yeah.
Prior to becoming a pundit. So I knew her in her pundit years, but she still had lots of friends in the music community that would come on the program. So one time Meatloaf came on the show, and I had rapidly ingratiated myself as the green room guy because I just wanted to hang out with guests and eat finger food. So I would go down there to bring people in. So I was like, Mr. Loaf, we're ready for you. And he's like, it's Meatloaf. And I was like, okay.
Mr.
Because I don't know what his actual name is.
His name is Robert Paulson.
Okay, I called him Mr. Loaf, and Mr. Loaf, Robert Paulson, who was a really nice guy.
No,
not his
that was
name.
the movie you hated.
It's Fight Club.
Fight Club.
Oh, fuck that. I hated that film. Brian Brushwood is wrong.
Brian Brushwood and like everyone in
You're
America.
all wrong. All of you are wrong. I stand facing the entire United States. You were wrong about Fight Club, America.
Defiant low T tanks.
But yes, as a beta male, but I'm the chief beta male. I'm the king of the beta males, and better to rule in hell than be a foot soldier of the alphas. Anyway, Meatloaf is hanging out, and I was like, hey, like, you just produced this album. You're so creatively productive. How do you remain so creatively productive? And he looks around and he goes, there's this game I play. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, there's this game I play to stay sharp. And then they're like, Meatloaf, we're ready for you. And I'm like, the fuck? Like, does he have some, like, super rich person Davos game that creative people get access to? And when he comes back out, I grab him and I'm like, wait, what game is it? Can I get on a list? And he's like, yeah, it's called Swords and Gladiators. I played on Facebook with my friends, and if you Facebook friend me, I get extra shields. And
Oh my God.
But we hit it off, so he gave me a copy of his album. He went, Andrew, listen to this album. You're not going to get it. Listen to it a second time. You're still not going to get it. The third time, it's going to blow your mind. And I went, I am not doing homework for you, Meatloaf. And I didn't listen to it till after he was dead. And I really enjoyed it the first time.
Did you really call him Mr. Loaf?
Yes.
What part of Eaton makes you think that he wouldn't call him Mr. Loaf?
I'm what, like, at least a quarter butler, right? Can we say that there's at least a quarter of me that's butler? Yeah.
Yes.
And then he'd accidentally trip over an ottoman. Or like,
Yeah, quarter Dick Van Dyke, quarter butler, quarter cowboy or farmer or something, and then miscellaneous is the last. Maybe Vulcan. Yeah, that's it. Quarter Vulcan, quarter Dick Van Dyke, quarter butler, and then I don't know.
You're a quarter cowboy from a Roy Rogers movie.
Yes, a fake cowboy.
A fake cowboy.
Fake, possibly gay cowboy. Yes, I'm in agreement. We're all in agreement here.
From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young.
I'm Andrew Heaton.
I'm Jen Briney.
We're not wrong on this edition of the program. We're talking about disinformation. Indeed, not only disinformation for the hurricane that already hit, but also the one that is about to hit, as well as a candidate that will debate a chatbot. We are in debate season for the rest of the political world. All that plus your emails. But we need to get into some gifts.
Yeah.
Joel donated $25 to We're Not Wrong, $5 for Justin, $5 for Jen, $15 for Andrew Heaton.
Hell yeah.
$10 for the Dem Titties clip, and $5 for the RFK FaceTime sex reenactment.
All right.
Love you guys. Also, I brought a share of Southwest stock. I can't wait for my leather jacket. I'm going to tell you, Joel, thank you so much for giving us the money. I'm not fucking divvying out $5. So eventually I'll pay for enough lunches. And, it'll all
I
come
am
out
just
in the wash.
thrilled that I am getting paid for comedy in some capacity,
Yes.
even if we have to work it down the road.
I think Justin's a crook and you owe me $5.
Yeah. That's not the kind of behavior that
Sue me, bitch.
we tolerate in the We're Not Wrong investment club, in which we invest in one specific airline.
Speaking of which, we
know.
have yet another barrage of shareholders. Southwest shareholder roll call. I have joined the Love Not Wrong shareholder group. I nominate Love Not Wrong as our single stock investment group's name. Another shareholder. Based on last week's podcast, I had to get 3 shares just to be part of the We're Not Wrong cohort of Southwest owners. I'll be happy to transfer 1 share to Jen after she gets her own. And on another shareholder, on October 3rd at 12:30 p.m., the notification that a new episode of We're Not Wrong went out. At 1:45 p.m., Southwest shares experienced a 26 times spike in trade volume. This time, the time pretty closely correlates to the point where the episode came out, and there were discussions about a potential meetup of We're Not Wrong Southwest shareholders. Jen, are you going to relent and buy a share of Southwest?
I've never bought an individual stock before.
So no,
That's-
you're maintaining your steadfast refusal.
It's not
keep
steadfast-
keep buying
just
until she breaks. She's close to breaking.
Oh my God. I can't believe this is getting this out of control.
This is amazing. Guys, we are changing the world. Not how we thought we were going to change the world, but we are affecting trade volume of Southwest Airlines. Congratulations.
Activist activist horseshit on the Southwest stock until Jen Bryant
And our
participates
message
in the stock market.
Our message to the people running our company is you're doing a great job. Keep doing exactly what you're doing until Jen joins, because that's what we're trying to do. Goad her into it.
Okay, I know how stupid this is. But like literally, how do you buy an individual stock?
So I use Robinhood. That's the app that I use. There are other things, I think, like E-Trade and things like that, but you don't have to have a stockbroker anymore. So if you'll download Robinhood, I think that's kind of the main one, you can just search for the stock that you want, and you can either purchase fractional shares of it, or you can purchase a stock outright.
Have you ever made a bet on an online app? Or have you only made bets in Vegas when you went to the window?
Well, they have the little kiosk, but it's basically the same thing.
Exactly. It's exactly the same thing, except the betting app is called Robinhood.
Okay.
Yeah. You put in money into the thing, you buy the share.
Let's check on my stock. How am I doing today with...
Yeah, you fuckers are going to drive up the price before I get around to doing this.
And whose fault is that?
Oh, you know what? We have.
I wasn't going to do this.
I bought my single stock of Southwest Airlines for $28.69, and I am happy to report today it is $30.96, meaning that I have made $2.27 off the stock. Thank you.
I got to get in on this.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Once I get in, you'll have no excuse.
Wait, I thought you already bought one.
Nope.
Have you not?
This is about torturing her, not me.
I know, honestly. And I don't understand how this keeps going.
It's really funny, and people love getting enthusiastic about stupid, silly shit. And I am happy to be the captain of that team.
I feel like I'm going to disappoint people now if I actually buy the damn stock.
No,
because then the game's
that's
over.
the point. No, the point is that we affect change. You're all piss and vinegar. Oh, these fucking these people buying these corporate raiders, ruining my airline. When you are asked to do $30.90 worth of action on your own part, what do? You sit on your duff. And you complain in your in your penthouse apartment. You just complain.
You know what's next though? I'm going to have the one share, and then you fuckers are going to make me go to the meeting and make me speak and make me do all of this stuff that I don't want to do.
Yeah.
I thought you cared
and
about
you'll get a good episode out of it.
They're already making decisions. Like Joe and I are already talking about jumping to United because they're making bad decisions and they're already made. So
how do you know? But how you know?
I'm exhausted by you people.
What do you mean, you people?
Yeah, what do you mean by you people?
Specifically you, Justin Robert Young. You needling son of a bitch.
Well, let's talk about lies. Hurricane Helene cleanup is ongoing, and Hurricane Milton is bearing down on Florida as we speak, which has given spotlight to an old conspiracy theory. They are controlling the weather. Conspiracy theories claiming government involvement have surfaced, and these ideas ignore historical patterns and common sense. Hurricanes, of course, have impacted the same regions for centuries, and controlling the weather remains beyond human reach. Despite efforts like cloud seeding, scientists acknowledge that hurricanes release energy on a scale far greater than any human intervention is currently able to control. As climate change worsens hurricanes, scientists emphasize that the key solution to reducing greenhouse gas emissions would curb their intensity. A question, Jen, are conspiracy theories like this truly harmful, or just random online chatter?
You know, it's tough to say because, you know, it's dumb, but it does lead to conversations like this, and where so many of these conspiracy theories are coming from people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, that fucking idiot, and her people in that party. You know, she's saying stuff like, you know, they're controlling the weather, and like, yes, you can't steer a hurricane in a certain location. But humans are changing the weather, and with the amount of power that these particular humans have, and when I say Republicans here, I'm talking about the ones in power. You might identify as a Republican. I'm not talking about you, although you are empowering these people. But the Republican Party in particular.
So they are changing the weather.
They are changing the weather. They are. And it's on a bigger picture than driving, you know, one hurricane to Republican districts in North Carolina. That's ridiculous. But I have now read bills and laws, bills in particular, because not a lot of these have become laws, but the Republicans so consistently over the 12 years that I've been reading bills, in lockstep, 100% of them, no exceptions, keep not only voting on bills that would keep us hooked on fossil fuels, but would also hamstring future administrations and states from taking any steps towards getting off of them. I call them the party of pollution, but it's not just pollution. It is this issue of fossil fuels, and the Republicans are the problem. And you know that like a lot of times I'm very willing to say like, well, the Democrats do this too. On this issue, the Republicans are the problem. So the fact that they're the ones when this stuff actually happens, spreading lies and not being helpful and not in any way saying, wow, Hurricane Michael spun up from a tropical storm to a Hurricane 5 or a Category 5 and wiped out Mexico City Beach, and holy shit, it's happening again. Like this thing went from a tropical storm to a Cat 5, Milton, in a day. And that is terrifying to anyone who's been paying attention to these things. And the models, I was watching when it was a tropical storm, and they said it'll probably hit as a Category 3. 24 hours later, it's a Cat 5. When I woke up this morning, I was hoping it would have weakened. It stayed a Cat 5 the entire night. Like, the Gulf of Mexico has never been this hot before. It's off the charts at this point, which is why if you're using weather models using historical data, they don't know what to do with these anymore. And so you're seeing that the climate is changing before our eyes, and the Republicans, instead of actually acknowledging that and saying, okay, we have the power to do something about this, we can reduce our fossil fuel use, instead they choose to go this bullshit route. And so, yeah, like, yes, it's a lie to say that they can control individual storms, but we are changing the climate on a big, so it's so.
So we should take Marjorie Taylor Greene seriously.
No, I mean, it's so hypocritical what she's saying that like, oh, they're steering the weather, where it's like your party is helping to change the climate faster than it needed to. We've known for 50 years, 10 years before I was even born, the climate scientists were saying this is an issue. And we have documents from Shell and Chevron and all those fuckers that knew exactly what was going to happen. It's been 5 decades, and the Republican Party is still keeping us hooked on fossil fuels. So for them to make these claims and not acknowledge that we are changing the climate, which changes the ferocity of the weather, it's hypocritical, it's wrong. And if anyone is upset about how many of our cities are getting destroyed because of this, it might be time to rethink voting for these people and putting them in office because they're reckless.
Can you elaborate on a point you made earlier, Jen? I understand Democrats are more likely to to enact subsidies for green technology, and they're more likely to have some sort of restriction on petroleum, on carbon fuels. Republicans are more likely to subsidize carbon. But you said specifically that they've hamstrung any efforts that would get states off of carbon. What are they doing to hamstring as opposed to just subsidizing or not subsidizing?
Great question. So they haven't actually been successful in this that I know of, but I've seen it many times in the bills that they're trying to get passed. And so in the study guide that I just put out on Congressional Dish, it's episode 301 if you guys want to see it, they are trying to stop the EPA from not only putting in like the Clean Power Plan type rules and stuff that would limit, fossil fuel burning cars. But in those bills, they then say you can never have a similar rule in the future. They're also like California.
What rule is this?
So the EPA makes rules based on laws, right? Like the regulations. And so they say not only can you not enact this regulation that you've been working on for the last, year to 5 years, but you can never enact a similar one in the future, regardless of what the law says. And so it's that part where it's like, not only are you trying to stop what the Biden administration is doing, but you're preventing any future administrations from going down a similar path. And I have seen that so many times.
This is in terms of like
Republican
reducing like gas cars or like what?
They've done it with that. They've done it with clean power plans. Right now they're trying to stop California from enacting stricter regulations on cars than the federal levels. Like I've seen this with fracking. I mean, they have tried to make stuff like that law many times. And no one knows
this. Is it
this.
because it's hilariously unpopular with the people?
I don't think so. I think it's because people aren't aware that these bills are even written. This is why I do what I do.
Those regulations tend to be unpopular. To phase out like gas cars or to make them more expensive.
Well, here's the thing. Why are they unpopular? Are they unpopular
because people
because
don't like spending more?
Well, they don't necessarily have to spend more. If we used our tax dollars to subsidize different kinds of technologies in our cars, the way we subsidize fossil fuels right now, they wouldn't have to be more expensive. We do have ways, tax dollars, to make these cars not as expensive. We could also invest in charging networks. Make them free if you want to. Like, there are ways that if we actually were serious about transitioning off fossil fuels, that it doesn't have to be out of pocket more expensive. But the Republicans are not allowing those types of ideas to go forward. So they just scream it's more expensive without actually trying to help the situation, because they are completely captured by the fossil fuel industry. And like I said, there's a lot of, when you talk about pharmaceuticals, you can blame things in both parties. But in this specific issue, the Republicans who are in power are the enemy here. So, you can say that it's unpopular, but when you have a media that's lazy and not telling you what's in these actual bills and not telling you what they actually do and what the effects would be, and instead just repeat the talking points of like, oh, they're trying to make your driving more expensive, even though it's bullshit. Like, it's unpopular if people don't tell you the full story and don't make the connection that you're driving these monster trucks that are burning fossil fuels when your town gets wiped out, like Houston. It's like we have these places in this country that are so invested in fossil fuels and vote for people that are invested in fossil fuels and then get...
Because it's the industry.
Yeah, it's the industry.
That runs their area.
Yeah, and they could transition to something else, but...
They could learn to code.
There are choices. Well, I mean, at this point, the people that are in the fossil fuel industry, like if you're in offshore drilling, there's an entire lifetime's worth of work for you to do to plug those wells. And we can't just get off fossil fuels tomorrow. That's the whole point. Like, there's a transition that has to be made. So if we take the students that are in school now and just say, maybe don't go into fossil fuels because it's a dying industry, then you can let the industry die without it like killing the economy in these entire places. But those are the steps we are not taking. And a big part of that is because of the Republican Party. Like, none of them voted for the Inflation Reduction Act. Zero of them. So it's like they're trying to create new industries that would be created in all
Maybe it's
50
because
states.
It was sold as the Inflation Reduction Act and it was really a green energy bill.
I don't give a shit what the name is. Like, they knew damn well it was a green energy bill.
That's not how it was sold to the American people.
Regardless,
at the time.
The people that are in Congress.
I mean, if we were just looking at the votes in the moment.
Yeah, it was a green energy bill, and that is the reason they voted against it. These people do not want to have cleaner, non-fossil fuel energy, and the connection between the changing of the climate, our weather getting more extreme, we are now losing entire American cities. And it's not just floods. We've lost Lahaina. We've lost Paradise. Like I said, Mexico City Beach. It looks like Tampa... The last time I looked, if this
Tampa's
thing,
going to miss it. It
yeah,
looks like.
It's going to go south
It'll be
of Tampa.
Sarasota.
But it's so close to the worst case scenario for Tampa. We may have lost Asheville. Like, we are losing entire American cities, and they keep us on
That's
fossil
a little
fuels.
hyperbolic. Losing entire American cities is a little hyperbolic.
Lahaina doesn't exist. Paradise doesn't exist. What's it called?
Well, Paradise
Mexico
happened
City
because Paradise happened because of down fucking power lines that PG&E didn't take care of.
But we also have to acknowledge that the drought is a part of it. Like, that was an extreme, like the fires. I grew up in Southern California. I have never seen fires like we've seen since like 2017. It's every year.
It was part of the reason why we moved from Northern California. So I am here to do it. I just don't know if everything. I find it very frustrating when people throw up their hands and say climate change or stuff like that, when I think that there is a culpability from the utilities that they did not maintain their fucking equipment.
Absolutely. But without the climate changing, the fires don't get as ferocious. They didn't
we know
when
that?
we were younger. They didn't. It's a pattern thing when you're looking at climate. So it's like any individual hurricane, and this is exactly what the Republicans fucking do, is they say, well, you can't prove that this one instance is climate change. But when you have one hurricane after another that is getting stronger as fast as they are, outpacing the models. Like, every time I see a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico and they say this is going to land as a Cat 2 or a Cat 3, it has outperformed every time. Like, that is a changing climate.
We have had fewer hurricanes this year than we normally do.
But they're turning into Cat 5s when they think they're going to be Cat 3s based on historical data. Like, are you actually saying that you don't think the climate is changing? Like, is that...
No.
Okay.
I tend to get sensitive with the hurricane stuff because I do think that, yes, the warm Gulf of Mexico is intensifying the storms, but...
Hottest on record. Hottest on record.
Sexy.
I'll jump.
Well, if I can finish, I have followed hurricanes as a Florida resident my entire life. Hurricanes do run on a fairly cyclical pattern. It's interesting to see that we are seeing paths and tracks of hurricanes that are almost identical to what they were 100 years ago. When I was growing up, it was the east coast of Florida that was traditionally taking the brunt of hurricanes. That they would come from the coast of Africa, make their way north, and then either hit the east coast of Florida or curve up into the Atlantic from there. What's happened recently is that you have had less hurricanes that happened during the summer, during the hottest months, and you have had more hurricanes that have happened later. So I was talking to my brother yesterday. He still lives in Florida, and he's like, yeah, it's weird that the traditional hurricane season of like July and August, which used to be when you would be eyes on the Weather Channel every day to see like where things were coming up. Now that's a lot quieter. You know, we are at Hurricane Milton. So like now we are at a point where, or like Helene was later than Katrina, for example. And so we had less. Now, Helene was horrifying because it hit a area that is not used to hurricanes. That is always going to be a problem. And yes, that was a more intense storm, but whenever you are flooding out areas that aren't used to it, it is going to be more devastating. What is going to hit Florida over the next few days, and please, everybody who is listening to this, if you still have power or you have downloaded this episode so you can listen to it on your phone while you're waiting this out, I hope that you are safe. I hope that you are in a shelter. Please don't be a Florida man and pretend that you can be in some of these storm surge areas, especially on the West Coast. Don't be a hero. That being said, Cat 3, Cat 4, even Cat 5 hurricanes hit Florida. Like that is a thing that happens. The state is very resilient in terms of being able to rebuild it. The devastation that will happen will certainly be something that we should take seriously and obviously be careful about, but it's not going to be what happened in Nashville. It's not going to be what happened in the mountains of North Carolina because they don't get that kind of rain. That is a very, very rare event that happens. In Florida, it'll be what it is. I'm not here to deny that the Gulf of Mexico is hotter than it is. I'm not here to deny that is going to intensify these storms. It's just, I do think that we should be realistic about what does and doesn't happen with climate change, because when you border into hysteria on it, you start to turn people off. And if we're going to ask people to take it seriously, we should be able to draw very, very thick lines of what it is and is not.
But at this point, I don't think it's hysteria to point out the differences and to show you that the Republicans in Congress are not taking this seriously.
I'm not here to tell you that. I'm not saying that.
I don't think it's
at that point. I'm just saying we should be clear about what is and is not affecting. From my perspective, you're asking my opinion. What I want to be clear on what is and isn't affected by climate change when it comes to frequency of storms is not.
Yeah.
The intensity of storms in the Gulf of Mexico specifically has been.
Yeah, and the amount of water that these storms can hold. So, I mean, if it was 50 years ago and Helene had the same exact track, would it have dumped as much water? We don't know. And so that's kind of the question. But what is not in question is what is causing these changes. We know that it's the burning of fossil fuels. We know this. And there is one party that is holding us back. And at the same time, when these things happen, is spreading bullshit about why they're happening. And I think we should all be furious about it and be aware of it. And when talking about climate change, not treat that as if that itself is the conspiracy theory.
That we can solve climate change politically.
Or by going vegan or whatever the fuck. Like we can do it individually. Like, no, this isn't something you can solve individually, although not driving monster trucks would definitely help. This is something that we have to do on a societal level. We need Congress to help with this effort.
We need top-down government action.
I'd like to weigh in for a second. I'm going to offer a concurring opinion using judicial speak to what Jen is saying. I also think climate change is happening. I think it's a problem. The way I approach this is carbon is a negative externality. That is a product that is coming out of industry and cars that afflicts everybody. And so from my perspective, presently we have carbon in the form of gasoline and the energy supply chain that is incorrectly priced. It's not taking into account the actual effects of what's happening. So in the same way that in a non-climate change sense, just in a straight up pollution sense, if you've got a factory on a river and it's putting out pollutants into the river, either you have to make it less polluting, or you pay the town back some amount of money for using that resource. You were fined for the pollutants that are coming out. I don't think that we're doing that at the right rate right now, and we're paying it on the back end. Now, where I disagree with Jen, I'm going to quibble a little bit, is I do think it's going to cost more, and I think that's part and parcel of this process. Is if I'm going to take the position as I am that we are incorrectly pricing the cost of burning petroleum because we're only looking at the front end and we're not looking at the back end and the negative externalities. If we're going to price it correctly, then that means the cost is going to go up. I'm in favor of a carbon tax, which is wildly unpopular, but I think that that's the best way to do it. If we want to have green technology in the form of subsidies, we are going to have to pay for that through increased taxes. So either way, you're going to end up paying more for this. Now, I'll argue that in the long run, it's a smarter play. And I will also argue that you're going to pay for it in some other way through FEMA and other things. But I'm not going to. I will fall short of claiming that we could do this seamlessly and without anybody paying more money. I do think we're going to end up paying more money.
And I don't agree with that, or I don't disagree with that. What I was trying to say is, like, on an individual level, like your car, saying that by asking people to buy an electric car, that necessarily has to be more out of pocket. If we were to tax these fossil fuel companies at a appropriate rate, that would be billions of dollars that we could help the transition in a lot of different ways. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like you and I pay out of pocket. We do need these corporations that are benefiting from this to pay, and then we can make it cheaper for individuals.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get a free lunch there. I think that you're either going to pay more for your car, or the corporations are apt to pass that on through to you, or you're going to pay it in taxes through the subsidies. But I don't think that we're just going to have I think people are going to end up paying more, but the reason is that currently we're all being subsidized by this process.
I guess my only question with anything, let's say that we are the best model behavior, right? And everything that you have said is taken on. And none of the rest of the world does shit. We're all in the same marble, and we have emerging countries with emerging economies that are like, oh, this is great. We can burn fossil fuels and keep the lights on at our hospital so we don't have children die because they happen to be born in a complicated way during the time where we just turn the lights off at the hospital. Like, it's hard to tell them, no, stop burning fossil fuels. They're going to continue to rise, and we're going to continue to globally burn more fossil fuels. So let's say that
that is a genuinely really good point, and it's why I think developed countries like the United States need to be focused on innovation over restriction. So, like we talked about the United Kingdom last week. The United Kingdom no longer has any coal-powered power plants. Great. The United Kingdom is really fixated on trying to become carbon neutral, and while that is laudable in many ways, they produce 1% of the world's carbon. So they could make a maximum reduction of 1%. That's the maximum amount. So, like, in the United Kingdom, when I'm over there, I'm like, you guys should be focused on innovation more than tightening the belt, because you could develop technology that you could disseminate to the rest of the world that would be gargantuanly more effective than just mea culpa, slapping myself in the back, which is what I think they're doing. In the case of the United States, I feel the same way, only bigger. What we should be doing is focusing on developing technologies that we can give to those countries, because I think it is immoral of us to tell a developing nation, you don't get to industrialize, you have to stay in squalor, you have to stay in subsistence agriculture. More people die every year from lung pollution, not from factories, but from burning cow dung in huts. That's more people die from poverty than they do from pollution, and I think it's immoral of us to do that. The emphasis, in my view, should be the innovation. And this is where there's a bit of a silver lining to all of this, is that the really catastrophic projections with climate change that come from the IPCC, which is the gold standard in these matters, are predicated not on the expansion of fossil fuels from the developed world, but rather the expansion of fossil fuels in the developing world as it develops. So they're looking at what is the projection of the United States and Europe, but more specifically, oh shit, what happens when Southeast Asia and Africa get to our level?
Which are happening now.
That's the oh shit stuff going on. And the reason that I'm less worried about this than a lot of people is that these same models always assume that all innovation has to take place within the United States and Europe. And I don't think that's true. I think there's all sorts of people that are Einstein level, Steve Jobs level, Thomas Edison level brilliant that are currently shoveling shit in Africa. And we're about to unlock the largest amount of brain power in all of human history, and they're going to be contributing to this as well.
Yeah, they're still going to do it here.
But we have the technology to help those countries power up without using fossil fuels. And as far as America, like, I think it's kind of a red herring when that argument is made, because the United States is the second largest carbon polluter in the world. So I'm not too worried about what other countries are doing right now. We could share the technologies that we have and innovate and do all that, but we have to limit our fossil fuel use here in the United States. China. So it goes
Who's
China.
number 3?
I know China, United States, Japan is in the top 5. I can't remember what the other 2 were, but we are number 2. We are huge. And so the idea that we, like, oh, well, why should we cut back when we have all these other countries? Like, we are the number 2 biggest problem in this area, and we do not have the number 2 largest population. For the number of, like, per capita, we are out of control with our fossil fuel use. So we really do have to be better in the United States.
I do not think we are going to lead through moral example in this matter. I think it is only going to be achieved economically. There are 1 billion people in China. Every single one of them wants to drive a Buick. So the only way we're going to be able to get them to get off this.
What do they want to drive?
Their number one. I just looked this up. Their number 1 form of transportation is rail. They have a system we don't even have.
If I may finish my thought, I think that for developing countries, we're not going to browbeat them into not wanting to industrialize. But what we can do is if we come up with things that are cheaper for them to use, where it's in their own best interest, then they will transition off of it. But I think that's going to be how it ends up playing out. Is they could access the same green technology that we're talking about, but if it's more expensive, they're not going to do it. We have to figure out ways to make it cheap and affordable for the rest of the world to adopt these.
But why are we focused on them and not ourselves? Like, this isn't even about leading. We're just not even doing what we're saying that we want other countries to do. So, like, fuck leading. Like, we need to have a rail network so that we don't need to all drive a Buick. Like, right now, you have to have a car in most places in the United States. We haven't put in our own infrastructure to make it possible to get around without it. Like, how about we focus on what we are doing before we start telling the rest of the world what they need to do?
I'm fine with that. And my ways to focus on that are a carbon tax. Let's treat carbon as a negative externality and let individuals and markets adjust. And let's focus on innovation rather than restriction. So I don't disagree with you. Those are the 2 pillars of the heat and climate change reform.
Let's say 2 Hail Marys when you get in the car. Apologize to Mother Nature.
Here's the thing about the restriction thing. I think fossil fuels need to be the bad guy. I think we need to be much more open that burning them is bad.
You think they're the bad guy?
Yes. And I think that there's a lot of people in this country, because they make money in those industries, there's this kind of like tiptoeing around the issue where it seems like, you know, the all of the above and
it is not a controversial thing in this presidential election.
No, exactly. And until we in this country say fossil fuels are bad, and we are all willing to say fossil fuels are bad, and if you are making a living in fossil fuels, you are doing something bad, which I'm sure there's people listening that are not going to like hearing that, but that is the case. Fossil fuels being burned for energy and transportation is the problem. And unless we're willing to say that, you have to identify the problem before you can start fixing it. And I don't think here in this country we have I don't think that we have fully accepted that we have that problem.
You've lost me. I don't think in terms of evil or good energy sources.
Say evil. I said that it is causing a problem. Well, evil is like a moral thing.
Okay.
This isn't morals. This is changing the climate we need to stop. So burning
I
is
don't
bad.
I don't see it as binary of good and bad. It's a series of trade-offs. Like it's if you could come up with a way to have cleaner carbon fuels, I wouldn't care. What I want to do is make sure that the incentive structure is correct. But like fracking, for example, fracking has been a net positive for climate change. It's been a net positive for climate change. Back when I was in high school, we didn't sign on to the Kyoto protocols, and we ended up sailing over them. And the reason we did that is we transitioned from coal to fracking, which is better than coal. Fracking produces less carbon emissions than coal does. Should we be on it forever? No, it should be a bridge thing. But the idea that is
Why
just sort of...
shouldn't we be on it forever?
Because we should eventually transition to cleaner fuel sources. I don't disagree with that, but the idea that we look at all of them as that this is inherently bad, and if we'd precluded that and just didn't do any fracking, we would have stayed on coal longer. So, for me, I don't think it's a very useful model to have good and bad. I think we should look at it as, what are the factors here? What are we trying to do? Incentive structures.
Well, and the reality is we're going to use the energy that's the cheapest. That's just like, if we want a fully green economy, then we need to make green energy as cheap as possible without necessarily having the government subsidize every inch of it.
Well, and that's where we're at with solar, and yet here we are burning all these fossil fuels. So unless there is an acknowledgement that they are a problem.
It's storing the energy that's always been the problem.
Well, I mean, Andrew really did have a very good point before, which is that right now, the polluting of carbon and just like pollutants in general is free, and it shouldn't be free. And so because that's not a part of the calculation, you can look at fossil fuels and solar and be like, they're about the same, even though they're not. Like climatologically, they're not, but financially they might be. So that is a part of the problem. That is a way that we can solve it. But what I'm saying is that there seems to be a lack of recognition, definitely in the Republican Party, but as you pointed out, more and more so in the Democratic Party, that using these types of fuels for energy needs to stop. They're not willing to say it. And I think we need to say it.
Heaton, do you think they are controlling the weather?
No, to go back, I'm now going back before everything we just discussed. Good chat, gang. I enjoyed that. No, I think that the ridiculous stuff we're saying on Twitter is absurd, and it's causing real damage to people.
So you do think it's causing real damage?
Yes, I do think it's causing real. First of all, it's stupid, batshit crazy stuff. The idea that the government, and I'm a pretty big critic of the government, am I not?
You?
The idea that the government is coordinating fucking hurricanes to target Republican settlements is batshit crazy. Like, what? Why? What outcome are you going to get from this? A hurricane hits your house and you go, well, now I'm not going to vote. You're still going to fucking vote. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
No, the reason that I think
I'll just say this. If the CIA could control hurricanes, we would have had a Cat 5 in Moscow by now.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's like there are things we can do around the edges. There's cloud seeding for rainfall. You can if you use certain amounts of propane and dry ice, you can reduce fog and cold environments on runway. There are little meteorological things we could do. They're not at the point where we could control a fucking hurricane. The reason that it's problematic is not this abstract. If that were it, if you just thought the government was doing it, it was a conspiracy theory, it wouldn't really affect anything. No, the reason that I think it's hurting people is you're seeing a spattering of viral tweets that will say things like, don't accept money from FEMA. It's a loan. You will have to pay it back. That's not true. FEMA's had to come out and go, no. I don't know all the details on this, but as I understand it, when you get into these kind of situations, there's small business loans from the Small Business Administration, which is subsidized by the American government, but yes, you have to pay back. You're paying below market rates for a subsidy. Yes, that's not the same thing as emergency grants from FEMA. Those are not strings attached. You get $750. For the people that are really in trouble, that really need that money, also possible that they're low information people, that they don't know these sophisticated things because they're not focused on learning about FEMA like we are. So for somebody to come out and lie to them and tell them that don't take the money, there's other people saying that FEMA's going to give you the loan, and then if you don't pay them back, they'll seize your property. Don't cooperate with FEMA. These are practically harmful things to people that need help right now. So I do think that this kind of nonsense has demonstrable problems associated with it.
Our friend Ryan Macbeth, who does a lot of military stuff, he did a great video about this, about misinformation during Hurricane Helene specifically. And his point of view was, number one, there's just out and out lies that are being put out there. You had a good example of it. Some of them are rumors that have spread out of small little windows of truth. Like there apparently have been culture clashes where FEMA, which is largely bureaucrats that come from the places where bureaucrats dwell, which is like the coast in DC, come down to rural North Carolina, and like a real ass mountain man comes down from his property with an AR on his back, and you have a little bit of a culture clash because somebody's never seen that kind of person with that kind of weapon come down and just ask them questions about where his money is. That leads to larger rumors of FEMA's not looking to help rural areas. They're more there to help city areas. It's not true, but there are problems, you know,
And there
when the rubber meets the road.
There are real problems too. There's problems that FEMA will do. I don't know how to fucking run a federal emergency management agency, but there's going to be mistakes, incompetencies. There's going to be things that charities and private individuals are able to supplement that they might be able to do better. That's all fine. That's all fair game.
Here's what I didn't like about FEMA is that when FEMA makes the conversation about we need to stop this misinformation, you are neither stopping the misinformation nor getting your correct information out. You can name and shame the people that are doing it. Congratulations. You're making them more famous with a cohort of people that really, really like to hear things that are wild and out of pocket and don't trust the government, right? I think there's probably another conversation that we can open a tab on and go into if you guys want about the fact that Alejandro Mayorkas has become a irradiated political figure and he's at the top of this organization as well. And so it's hard to ask for people to buy in that are low trust people in a system when you have somebody that has become controversial for other reasons. It's partly a reason why sometimes bureaucrats need to get fired for reasons whether or not you agree with their competency on certain things. That being said, if you don't just highlight what we are doing through constant communication, you are FEMA in a disaster area. You can commandeer 8 o'clock every night on every 24-hour news channel for a briefing if you want. You could do that. They would cover it. And you'd be able to say, here's what we need. If you are in this area, we're right now trying to clear out this area, come to this thing. You can get that on a global scale. You can spread that information. When you're bitching about the misinformation, it is only exacerbating a problem that is real, and you are not helping.
I think part of the problem comes when you have people within government, elected people who should know better and in fact do know better, who are the sources of the lies.
But you were going to punish them at the ballot box.
We don't.
I'm aware that incumbency rates exist. I am saying that right now. I'm focused on right now.
Exactly.
Yes, is it bad that these people are saying it? Fucking yes. I am here for that. Also, there are people that are dying. This is the most deadly hurricane since Katrina. And number one, I don't know exactly what the FEMA response is. I don't think that in general with disaster relief, we really understand stuff, especially non-traditional places that get hit and flooded. We don't really know what FEMA's response is, what disaster response was until after everything is cleared out and the residents are there to tell their story.
Well, Jeff Jackson actually did and I'm so bummed he got redistricted out, but he represents North Carolina and he's been doing updates. And so he did a really good rundown of we have this many FEMA personnel. We have National Guard from these states. We have there were a couple military divisions, like the Airbornes that were in there. And he just listed everything that they're doing. So it's some electeds are being really helpful.
Good for them. I guess.
But are you saying that FEMA shouldn't say what the truth is, not respond to it and just let it fly?
I don't think that them chasing down misinformation is going to be as good as them getting out the information that people need to live. This is not me saying that that's good. It's not me saying that misinformation is good or that people who are spreading it are awesome and should get off scot-free. I'm just talking about right now, in this moment, when people are still fucking dying, trying to fight the message board war of Twitter is not the best way that FEMA can operate, in my opinion. And that's just me being a message board denizen and knowing that the more you feed the troll of pointing out, these people are doing a bad thing, you don't make it better. You've never made it better. Not from the first fucking Usenet board have you ever made it better.
I disagree.
I'm going to draw attention to something that we haven't talked about, which I'm pleased by, is that nobody in our panel went, you know what we should do is have a law about misinformation on Twitter. None of us had that impulse, which I think is a very good one. And I think this is part of what happens now. The era that we're living in is one where the gatekeepers are toothless. And I think overall it's beneficial because back in the day, if this were to happen 40 years ago, the information would be far more tightly constricted by gatekeepers, but also those gatekeepers could, get us into Iraq or do any number of things. So it's good that that's happened, but kind of the cost of that information being free is that we're going to get misinformation.
Is trying to deal with a feral world, a feral information world. That's and look, we can roll our eyes and say, no, you're letting them get off scot-free. They need to be punished. I get it. I get the desire to do it. In my opinion, as a native internet denizen, that's just not how you advance your goal.
Well, and I'm not saying that it's like a punishment thing. I think that if you have a message that has gotten out to so many people, like if you take the $750 for immediate needs, if you take that money, you're at risk of losing your house. When so many people believe that and it's flying all over TikTok and it's getting into Instagram, like I saw it so many times. If that rumor is louder than what FEMA is saying, I think they do have to address it directly and say, this isn't true.
Then they
You
need to
can't
be
just
better about
not.
getting their message out. You can't
But that
combat
is
it,
their
or else.
message.
Yeah, no, their message is they're trying to chase this horse that's left the barn, as opposed to communicating this stuff more forcefully themselves. And that is just a difference of how they are communicating.
I guess I just don't know how you get proactive about something like that, where you can come out and say, we're giving you $750 that you can get in cash right now. Are they supposed to think of all the bullshit
other thing. The other thing, and this is the thing that I don't know. And I don't know if we know for sure right now is exactly how widespread that problem is. We know that there's a bunch of people on Twitter. It's getting a bunch of impressions that if you take $750, you will lose your house. Do we know how many North Carolina residents have decided that they are not going to get the $750 and not take their house? And because they have heard that rumor, we don't know. And so this is also a thing that winds up becoming a tempest in a teapot, because we're focused on the fucking message board and not the people out there that are trying to get these problems solved. And I'm not saying it's not worth talking about. It is worth talking about, but it's just not worth making the center point. And that's what I fear happens with stuff like this, because it's also, unfortunately, intertwined in the final month of an election, where everything is kind of worth 4 times the bonus points of, oh, FEMA doing a good job is Kamala plus 10, which is why she's trying to like call Ron DeSantis and coordinate with the Milton relief, which was fucking stupid because she's never done that before. That was a political thing from her to do it. It was a political thing for DeSantis to publicize that he wasn't going to take the call. Like, we're in a very dumb period for shit like this. And so I would just like to cut the shit and say, take the fucking $750 gift card and get the fuck out of Tampa. That's what I would like to have said on this platform.
Can't disagree with that, kid.
Also, it's good that they're saying that the government's doing it, not the Jews. For a long time, it was the Jews that controlled the weather.
Always means.
But now it's just the government. Like, we've become slightly less anti-Semitic in our conspiracies. This is positive development.
This is always my thing, where like, whenever you abstract they enough, it's always
but
the Jews.
But who's behind
it's
that
always
guy?
the Jews.
It's the Rothschilds.
It's like, well, it's the banks. Well, who runs the banks? The Rothschild. Well, who runs the Roth? It's always the Jews in the center of the earth. It always it always turns into the Jews in the center of the earth. Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong. We'll be talking about how they fired Robert Saleh, the head coach of the Jets.
Wow.
We are going to make Andrew Heaton talk about NFL football and the Middle East at the same time. Pure hell. Pure hell for Andrew Heaton on the Patreon exclusive episode. If you want to see this Muppet of a man squirm and sweat through his white linen shirt, then you need to pay for the privilege. Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong. Bentley Hensel, an independent candidate in Virginia's 8th congressional district, has created an AI chatbot, DonBot, after being denied a debate with incumbent Democrat Don Beyer. Hensel is a software engineer and programmed the bot with Beyer's policies using data from websites, press release, and the Federal Election Commission. Despite Beyer winning his district by 75% of the vote in the last election, Hensel persisted in seeking a debate scheduled for October 17th. He told Reuters that the chatbot isn't meant to deceive voters, but to provide accurate answers. If other candidates don't participate, Hensel might create AI versions of them as well. Mr. Andrew Heaton, is this fair or foul?
I think this is great. The only thing that I don't like about it is that the bot can't run for Congress. I feel like if the bot does a really good job in the debates, that you should be allowed to put it on the ballot. Yeah, I think that this is fair, so long as they are making efforts to publicize what is happening. You know, I think if this were a situation where AI was being used to distort someone or create statements that they didn't make or make them look bad and people didn't know it, in that case, I think we're getting into the realm of libel. But if it's a situation where
So publish the training data, maybe?
just
Yeah.
this is an AI chatbot on the Chiron, or say it at the beginning of the screen. Say exactly like, look, Don Beyer wouldn't show up to the debate because he knows he's got this in the can and he doesn't have to bother talking to the constituents because he's an incumbent and he's going to win. And because he's deigned to not participate in the democratic process because he doesn't have to, we're going to put up this AI bot that will do a fairly good job of approximating what he would have said based on published data. Say that at the top of the program. As long as you've done that, I think your ethics and whatever harm that might have happened are clear on it. So no, I think that's fine. I think putting pressure on candidates to participate in it is good. A lot of candidates don't because they don't have to. The reason that candidates typically participate in debates is because they feel they get something out of it or they're going to be punished if they don't. They don't do it because they really like doing it. So having foot to their fire on this, I think is a good one. Yeah, for what it's worth, I think like part of the reason we don't get people to do debates like this is in a district of 700,000 people in Northern Virginia that's been, I assume, gerrymandered to fuck. There's no point for him to do it. He's Don Byers has got a really, really solid majority, so why would he? I look at this and go, I think this is an electoral reform that we would be of benefit to do rather than worrying about AI. Like I looked up this earlier today. When the Constitution was ratified, no state in the Union had as big of a population as any congressional district does in the United States today. Biggest state in the Union as of 1789 was 690,000 people in Virginia. And today, every congressional district's targeted around 700,000 people. That's too fucking big. It's too big. We don't have meaningful democratic representatives in this country anymore because the congressional districts are just too big to function democratically. So I'm not worried about the AI. I would rather just have like a massive Congress of 4,000 people where everybody has a 30,000 person district.
Jen?
I love this idea. I think it's amazing. And if Bayer doesn't like it, show up, you big baby. And I wish we would do this all over the country so that these people like, oh, you want to speak for yourself and not a chat bot that was created by your opponent? Like, show up to the debate. We have way too many people in this country that think that they don't have to debate. And this was something that was kind of set by, at the presidential level, where we have a lot fewer debates now. They feel like they don't have to do it. And so I think it's just kind of trickling down. And I would love to see anything that reverses the trend. So yeah, don't like it? Show up, bitch. I'm into it.
Well, there was a commission for presidential debates. It was very unpopular.
Yeah, and that was riggy too. So
yeah, but they were committed to doing 3 debates, and they were the ones that organized it. And then they went away, and we had 2 debates.
Which got torpedoed because the candidates basically said, like, oh, we're just not doing it.
Well, and there was popular backing by certain pundits.
Mm-hmm. I stand by all of my positions on the bullshit bipartisan committee to rig the debates or whatever it was called. I stand by all of that.
I'm just saying, this is the landscape that you guys wish for.
I don't think it's downriver.
Yes, it is.
It's not.
Respectfully, I don't think it's downriver the presidency so much. Like to my knowledge, the only debate that's actually been foregone, I think, is Carter at one point. Just went, we're not going to flat out do it this time.
No, he brought it back.
You're right. He brought it back. That's right, because he did debate Reagan. Yeah,
they didn't.
Ford, who didn't do a debate?
It's after Kennedy and Nixon, they were like, "Fuck this! This is terrible." So nobody did it until Carter.
Yeah. So like when I was on the Hill, and I'll be clear on this, I don't have the data for this, but it would not surprise me. In fact, it would surprise me very much if presidents debate less than members of Congress do, because members of Congress don't want to do it. If
Nancy Pelosi hasn't debated in my entire lifetime.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Is I think Congress debates less than the president. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And I don't,
especially if we're counting primaries.
I don't think it's a cultural thing.
50 debates. We have way more debates in the primaries than we've ever had.
I'll stand corrected on that one, but the point still stands that anything that gets these babies to show up and debate, I'm for it.
I think generally, if you're like Heaton, there's this thing we're thinking about doing. It'll make politicians sweat more. Fucking do it.
Yeah, let's go.
Anytime you can make the politicians sweat, fucking turn up the heat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Make them talk about how the Jews fired Robert Saleh.
Oh my God. You wanted this topic. What do you have to say about the chatbot?
I think that it's interesting as a gimmick. So, all right, if you look at the history of debates, everything is a show, right? So if you are challenging, if you are behind and you're not going to win, you often challenge the person who is going to win to do a debate, and you want them to do 50 debates. We should do a debate.
You get more
times a
media
day,
coverage and they
every
might fuck up.
Well, and you also want to make them a big old chicken pants who's scared of the issues. And so you do debates where if the media wants to cover it. So for example, the Senate race in Georgia last cycle, 22. You had Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. They did one debate where they were together, and then there was another debate schedule where Herschel Walker thought he did a really good job with the first one and was like, fuck it, I'm not doing another debate because I'm Herschel Walker. I'm going to say something really stupid. And so...
Smart move on Herschel Walker's part.
Ultimately, for not, as he lost. But they did a debate with Chase Oliver, now the
Libertarian candidate for
presidential
presidency.
nominee, and Raphael Warnock. And I can't remember if they did it with this or they just threatened to do it, to have an empty podium for Herschel Walker. So it's like visually you can demonstrate, hey, somebody's not showing up. Now, it's electioneering. It's the stuff that I really love to demonstrate visually and to get the message out that somebody is either serious or not serious. I love debates. I think that people should debate all the time. I also know that people usually don't give a shit. There's debates happening right now for Senate races that have commandeered tens of millions of dollars a piece that were probably watched by dozens of people on outlets that haven't even listed them online.
McCaskill really gave him hell this time. Wow. That's my impression of a debate watcher.
Kamala, didn't she accept a debate from ABC and says she's going to show up whether Trump shows up or not? Is that a real thing, or did I dream that?
There's been a few. CNN put out a thing. ABC put out another thing. But like, this is the problem with if there's no moderating organization, whether or not the last one was fucking haunted, according to you people.
Why is that so helpful? Because they don't have to show up. There was never a legal requirement that they had to participate in these things.
But
you just had a body of hacks that agreed to intermediate between them.
Yes, exactly.
I like the League of Women hacks.
Yeah.
They were better.
Yeah.
Sure.
I like women.
And then they quit doing it. So
no, they didn't. They got taken away from
Yeah,
them.
because of like the commission of presidential debate basically coup. It was the Republicans and Democrats saying we're not going to participate.
I'm going to call Janine Halbro the leader of the League of Women Voters tomorrow, and she's going to back me up on this. And I did not make her up.
Number.
That's her real name.
Is there another Trump Kamala debate scheduled?
No. And it's not going to happen.
So the big orange chicken pants is not going to do it?
I mean,
Instead, he's hanging out with Andrew Schultz. Did you guys see that?
They've each made a bunch of offers for debates, and the other one wouldn't take it. And so this is the problem with having it be out between the campaigns, is that they're now offering debates that they know the other one isn't going to take is now part of it.
You know what I would do?
Again, everything is a part of the show. Like there's no part of this that is actually like,
see, and that's the show bit. That's why if I were in this position, I wouldn't have an AI bot. I would just hire an impersonator that I think is kind of funny.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Like Kamala versus a Trump impersonator, very funny. Would watch, and would like be kind of Trumpy. Like it would kind of benefit her, I think.
I would watch that too.
I don't think that they're...
And then Trump would like respond by getting one of those hobos you dunk at the carnival to be Kamala.
Yeah, the Kamala campaign really got out of their shell this week and did challenging interviews with The View, Howard Stern, and Stephen Colbert.
Well, and Caller Daddy. That's the other big one, yeah.
All of which produced bad quotes from Kamala because she can't answer the question that both Colbert and The View gave her, desperately hoping to help her, by the way. These are all Democratic voters.
Colbert's not... I don't have any doubts about how Colbert's going to vote.
They were like, so 60% of America wants something different than what's happened over the last 4 years. What would you do differently than the last 4 years?
She's like, nothing.
And she's like, on The View, she's like, I can't think of anything. Like, everything's been great. And then on Colbert, she's like, well, first off, I'm not Joe Biden. And she gets, this is the most juiced, friendly audience she's ever going to get. The crowd is like, woo! 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 Like, it's like, and I'm not Donald Trump. Woo!
Like, we know.
And then she can't answer it because I think she's being held hostage by Biden. That because Biden's also come out.
What leverage does he have at this point?
He can just say that she's an idiot and she's ruined everything and she's made a bunch of dumb decisions and tank. If the sitting president says that the sitting vice president has done a terrible job and has leaked a bunch of stuff in the last month, it's not going to hurt. It's not going to help her campaign.
But he surely Biden wouldn't be that vain as to do that just because he's butthurt and hand the election to
Certainly
Trump.
has made sure to go out, did it last week, to make sure to go out and say, me and the vice president have worked hand in hand on every single thing that I've done.
But with
She
his
has been
arrogance, he thinks that's helping.
Guys, Joe Biden stepped down from running for president over a year and a half ago in order to ensure that the Democratic Party would have time for an official competitive primary to yield the best possible candidate. That is the man we're talking about.
I just don't understand why the Harris campaign hasn't found something that Biden didn't really focus on at all to say, this is our thing. Like, we're going to be for single payer healthcare, something like that.
Or ending the war in Gaza.
Well,
that would help.
that's a little bit more in the meat of it, but you're right. That would be something that certainly would help in Michigan. But they have not done anything. They're like, we're totally different. On day one, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. What would you do differently? Literally nothing. I am both the vice president and a candidate for president. That's totally new. I have all the experience that you'd ever want. Plus, I'm a fresh new voice that's ready to shake things up. I have no idea what I would do differently, but boy, would it be different if I were in office.
The quantum candidate.
Exactly.
I love it.
I am Kamala Harris. I am everything to everyone, as long as you still think that's cool. If you don't, then maybe, I don't know. I'll say something else, but probably not.
I have a vagina.
I have a vagina. Yeah. And also her...
Which to her, I don't think she's leaned too much into identity stuff, has she? I feel like
she hasn't, but her Call Her Daddy appearance was apparently all about abortion, and everyone's like, okay, we get your stance on that, lady. Like, let's talk about
But she could reach out to middle America to go, but I did it with a gun.
She did that, yeah. She's like, I own a Glock.
On 60 Minutes. She said she got a Glock, and I've shot it.
You know what? I'm going to say, if on 60 Minutes Kamala fucking pulled out a sock pistol, I'd have some points. I'd be like, okay, 5 points, Kamala.
Like a little pink one?
Yeah, I would just think if she had a Derringer pistol that she pulled out to show in 60 Minutes, that'd be fucking cool.
Well, also, it's like
if she had it in a garter. And
yeah.
Just like, woo. Yeah.
She keeps
Jim
saying,
gave it to me for my birthday. I call it the rabbit.
She keeps saying, like, oh, but, my background's in law enforcement. It's like, you were a prosecutor.
Yeah, I don't think she was ever a cop.
You weren't like a beat cop. You didn't like come up on the streets.
Which, is that accurate that she was never a cop?
I don't think she was ever a cop. No, she was an attorney. And then she went from attorney to prosecutor and thence to attorney general, thence to the Senate.
Yeah.
So it's like her saying like, oh, well, I made my position on fracking clear in the 2020 cycle, when it's like what she's referring to is in the vice presidential debate. She said Joe Biden is not for banning fracking. She specifically said that. She never said she's not for banning fracking. She said Joe Biden is not for banning fracking. It's like, well, I made my point clear.
Yeah, she's word vomit.
This is America's come together, and we've gone, who are the two best, smartest, most honorable...
We're on 3.
honorable people, and the good guys we can't lose. We're choosing between gold and platinum. There's no wrong turn here.
It's a fucking amazing that we have 3 candidates in this, and already one was so bad they were like, oh, Jesus Christ, get him off the stage, put this woman in here. Mother of pearl. We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. Again, that is we're not wrong pod at gmail.com. We got some canes over here on the debate. Is it illegal to shout bomb during Joker 2, writes? During the VP debate, Waltz used the oft-repeated Schneck versus U.S. quote of shouting fire in a crowded theater to justify censorship. I hate this quote as it was originally to justify the incarcerating of anti-war protesters. While I don't believe Governor Walz was advocating for arresting baby boomers for having protesting against Vietnam, I do believe that we all have a responsibility of understanding our words before we use them, and was angered that no one at the debate even mentioned the historical reference. Do public figures have a responsibility for their words, or am I just a history nerd that should shut up and give myself a wedgie?
I appreciate the history that you're dredging up, but I respectfully think you're overthinking this. So what?
It's wedgie time.
What you're saying is that yes, there's this frequent quote: "You can't shout fire in a crowded theater." You're right.
As a limitation of the First Amendment.
Yep, and that was a horrible ruling by the Supreme Court that allowed people to be prosecuted for speaking out against war bonds. It was a horrible violation of individual liberty, of freedom of speech, and in perpetuation of World War I, which I don't think we needed to be in anyway. So your historical analysis is spot on. But I suggest
Kaiser lover over here.
Yeah, I keep getting called a Kaiser asset by Hillary Clinton. I think we can make a delineation here between the actual historical impetus for this versus the logic therein. I think the logic's okay. Like there are certain restrictions on speech in a total absolute sense, in the sense that if I go on national television and I say we should literally kill Justin Robert Young and I give his address, this is something that can be curtailed. And so if there's something that has a truly imminent thing, then yeah, I think the logic is okay insofar as it goes. Whether it's being applied correctly or not, to me, is the bigger issue.
Green Tariffs writes, China continues to build more coal-burning plants. China manufactured goods are a proxy for dirty energy. Tariffs on dirty energy nations are 100% compatible and necessary to combat greenhouse gas-driven climate change.
So by that logic, the rest of the world outside of China should be slapping tariffs on everything that we produce here in the United States. I don't think we would want that to be the standard, so I don't agree with that. But then also, when you say that Chinese manufactured goods are a proxy for dirty energy, yes, they are building some new coal plants, which is a problem, but they also have goals that by 2050, they want to be carbon neutral and have taken some steps. And I actually looked into this. So some of the steps they've taken, they added as much wind and solar generation to power the entire UK, and they did that in just 2023. So they were building wind and solar farms very, very quickly. Also, as many people know, my husband is a solar engineer. I looked up because he's constantly talking about how these tariffs would be very bad for his industry. So 8 out of the 10 largest solar panel manufacturers are in China. The United States only has one on the top 10 list. It's First Solar, which is a company that everyone apparently hates to work with. And so if you want to stop our own transition to green energy, putting giant tariffs on solar panels, that's not great. Like I said before, rail is the main transportation in China. We're here in the United States, highways, and we keep buying these fossil fuel guzzling trucks to go on them. So they're ahead of us in the transportation realm. Along the same lines, China has invested heavily in creating a electric bus industry, and 84% of their bus fleet is electric. And China also has the world's largest EV charging network. In fact, they have 2/3 of the global total chargers. And
really
so,
slurping the world's #1 polluter, huh?
well, so that's like, yeah, they are building coal plants, but it's a bigger, like, there's more nuance to it than that. So they're building these coal plants, apparently, like, who knows, but they're building them as backups as they do a transition. But they are very clear in that this transition is a priority for them. And our politicians aren't even talking about a transition. So, like I said, like, this idea that we should just put tariffs on everything Chinese because they are the dirtiest, I don't think that's wise. And it's also not a standard that will help us in any way in the rest of the world because of our own dirty production.
I'll be dead and buried before I argue with Jen on tariffs being good. So yeah, I'll let Jen. I'll talk about tariffs later. I'm not going to fucking fight on this one.
Less jobs for journos writes, out of the box idea, would replacing debate moderators with somebody who isn't a journalist alleviate some of the concerns around fact checking or neutrality? I'll take this one. So I think that television journalists are very good moderators for television debates, mostly because it is a skill to professionally, under live deadlines, move along a television show. That is a unique skill that television presenters have. If you are confining this debate to 90 minutes, it is a 90-minute television show, then it makes sense to have it there. What I have argued about is don't put the pressure of these television anchors, don't make them a one-person fact-checking desk, because they're Ron Burgundy. They're great at reading things off a teleprompter very professionally, but they're not, it's hard. I don't want to call them dumb. They're often dumb. But it's hard to do, to remember. Like, that would be a whole skill in and of itself, and I don't think that it's fair to do that to them, and I think it degrades the quality of the debates. But if we are doing television debates, that's fine. I think we have all agreed that we would love to see more long-form conversational stuff. If we are in a world without the Commission on Presidential Debates, then I would love to see just a podcast where you're sitting down with both of these candidates and they're just talking of, having a conversation. Maybe it's not even a debate. It's just more of a conversation on stuff. That'd be ideal. That'd be fucking amazing. So I'm for non-traditional stuff, but if we are looking at the format of a 90-minute presidential debate, it makes sense to have television anchors move things along. Ask the questions, move them along.
I've had lots of experts on my program, not as much anymore, but maybe when I first started, who are experts and they're really, really smart and they're not used to talking on camera or they're not used to talking on microphone. And it is a skill. Like being able to navigate these things is not something that people naturally have, particularly when they're under stress and under scrutiny.
I loved your idea, Justin, of having some kind of like
weekly debates.
Well, yeah, that would be super fun. But also after the debates, if we made it just a standard thing that happens, that there's a 30-minute to an hour long fact check where, people during the debate are doing the actual work. You can have a whole team of people doing it. And then it would be kind of fun as the viewer to be like, oh, who's the biggest liar? I think that would be a way to solve this without breaking up the flow.
And I think it would be great. It would be just a great communication. If you actually had people that you trusted and you were like, you could build that trust by saying, okay, well, they said this here, because here's the reality about most political speech is that nothing's an out and out lie. It's a distortion of a kernel of a truth that is hyperbolic, right? So you are going to say that, well, Democrats have this extreme, like the Democrats have an extreme abortion policy. It's like, if you literally read the letter of a law, of a state law, then it can be extrapolated into something horrifying in the same way that Democrats do all the time with Republicans and say that, well, look at the letter of the law. This is what they actually believe. It'd be helpful if somebody actually went through that and said, Tim Walz, the thing that he got called on by J.D. Vance, he was then he was asked about again on Fox News Sunday with Shannon Bream, who did it in a more kind of specific way, citing the actual text of the law that Tim Walz had to talk his way around of. And it's like, that's helpful. Like, it's not helpful to say Democrats are looking to kill babies in the 9th month because they want to go to the club instead of have a child, right? Like, that's not helpful. But actually talking about the law and saying, what are the laws on the books? What do they allow? What do they not allow? That is helpful. So, yeah, I think that would be a good idea. Great idea by me. Pennsylvania swing state voter says, when did Trump and Vance explicitly state and reiterate that their plan was to apply a flat 20% tariff on all imports? My understanding is that he would expand the policy, which Biden and Harris kept, which was specific, targeted, and fluid. In 2018, imports on targeted items dropped 37%, but exports only dropped 9.9%. At worst, these tariffs might have cost our GDP less than 0.05 in growth. At best, we saw foreign companies move manufacturing to the United States. Samsung started manufacturing appliances in the U.S. Our GDP maintained steady growth, and inflation was under 2%.
I'll take this one. So Trump explicitly said that he was going to apply a flat 10 to 20% tariff on Wednesday, August 14th at a Trump rally in Asheville, North Carolina. This took me 20 seconds to find. This is a specific thing that he's saying. This is different from what the Biden administration and the Trump administration did. It is far more expansive, and it's tariffs. Like, we had got a really good email that Justin sent to me, and I read it, but there is a difference, and our emailer said it so much more eloquently than I did. But essentially, the penalties, they are penalties that we have had on China. They weren't tariffs because they have done bad things in the WTO, essentially. So it's like, there's a difference between penalties and blanket tariffs. He is suggesting something different from what he did before. So all of your stats or whatever don't really matter, because what Trump is proposing is something entirely different than what has already been done.
I would love to pile onto this, please, if I may. Listener, I enjoyed your email. It was a well-written email. I think we capped it for time, but it was a little bit more thorough when it was sent. But it was very well written. You clearly put in research. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the respectful tone. I disagree with you on the implications of all of this for the reasons that Jen said and more. So you bring up the economy under Trump and the email and the effects of the tariffs under Trump when he was president. What Trump did previously was targeted Chinese tariffs that he was able to exercise under the powers that the presidency has been delegated by Congress. But he was putting on 10 to 15% tariffs on very specific goods coming out of China. What he has now proposed, as Jen brings up, is a 10% blanket universal tariff for all imported goods in the United States. That is an order of magnitude larger. Jen is absolutely correct on that. Where the ambiguity comes from is that he oscillates between saying 10% or 20%, and he will sometimes go further and say 60% on anything out of China itself. So if we're putting this in perspective here, right now the weighted tariffs that Trump had was the weighted tariffs for all stuff that we're bringing into the country, the amount of things that were affected by it was about 2.3%. If he were to put in a 10% universal tariff, that would be about 10 times larger. So we're talking about taxes on imports that would be 10 times larger in terms of the shock to the economy than they currently are. And that would be the biggest tariffs we've erected since Smoot-Hawley. And that was, if you remember your history, something that seriously fucked up the economy during the Great Depression. So I think that this would be bad across the board. And I don't think it's getting as much attention as it should. And this is something that would be much larger and different than what you've previously experienced. The other thing that I would add to that is in the email that was cut down, you brought up that you were doing well under Trump. I'm glad to hear that. That you saw changes in your industry. I am also glad to hear that. I wish you the absolute best. When you're looking at the effects of these Trump tariffs that occurred under his administration, you need to be comparing that to the opportunity cost rather than the current economy. And the opportunity cost of the Trump tariffs was about $195 billion. So that's $195 billion that were lost to the economy that we otherwise would have enjoyed if we'd had better trade and less taxes on products. When you put those taxes on products, we end up having less stuff because of how comparative advantage works. We have retaliatory tariffs that are put up by other countries. The EU right now is openly flirting with doing a 50% retaliatory tax on us if Trump becomes president, which means that if you make cars, if you make Harley Davidsons, if you have agricultural exports, they're going to be taxed more, which means you'll sell less, which means you'll have less money. So this would not be good for the economy, for any economy. There would be some winners that would come out of it. If you were to put tariffs on automobiles, one of the things Trump has said, probably hyperbolically, when he was just shooting from the hip, is maybe we should do 100% tariff on imported automobiles to the United States.
This is often spoken when he's at a place that's like, oh, if you open this plant in Mexico, I'm going to put
and it's
100%.
Probably hyperbolic, but let's say that it happened. What that means is we're now going to tax all incoming cars by 100%. Well, what happens in the United States then is that all of the American domestic manufacturers will just raise the prices of their automobiles. They'll do 80% increase so that there's a clear reason to go American, but it's going to affect consumers. The overall country is going to lose out. There will be winners in it because all economic decisions have winners and losers, but you have to look at the net to this. And I would say net, this would be very, very, very bad for the American economy and the global economy.
The tariffs would require an act of Congress, right?
Theoretically, they should, but the way this works now is since Smoot-Hawley, the United States Congress has delegated trade policy to the president insofar as tariffs go as a tool of foreign policy and regarding anything that can be categorized as affecting national security or the supply chain for national security. So the two different ways that Trump has got around any of this, some of it he just can do because he can leverage it as president, as delegated by Congress. And then partly he can go, well, this is a national security issue. And go, this is now, steel is a national security issue, which is why we suddenly started putting tariffs on Canada and things like that, because it's national security.
No one has used national security to do stuff that they shouldn't do.
Never, ever, ever. But yeah, I think he'd have a very good shot at doing this. And he said he would just ignore Congress. I mean, like if you'd asked me 3 years ago, would we flout the WTO? I would go, no. Like the WTO might be the only international body that the United States actually gives a shit about. Because back during Gore versus Bush, no, it wasn't. It was Kerry versus Bush, excuse me. Bush had fucked with the WTO, and the WTO went, all right, well, everybody else can charge more on oranges from the United States now. Fuck you, Bush, because they can, if you violate WTO rules, the WTO can target how to punish you. And Trump started a trade war with China. He did so on the grounds that they were violating WTO rules. The WTO ruled against him, and he kept doing it anyway and tried to negotiate something specific with China. But it appears to be something that he can lead the charge on and has a significant chance of pulling off. This is not a thing where a presidential candidate goes, vote for me and I'll get single-payer health care in. That would definitely require Congress. But in terms of fucking with trade law, yeah, that's something the president has a lot of latitude
Well, and
on.
essentially the punishment from the WTO would basically be them telling other countries, like, you can go ahead and slam tariffs on American-made products now.
Yeah.
Like, that's the punishment.
Which they almost certainly will do. That's what happens is when you start putting tariffs on other countries, they respond by putting tariffs on your stuff. And then you end up, everybody gets less stuff and it costs more.
Yeah, I mean, the only end of the tunnel there with Trump, whenever he talks about it, is that and that's when we make a deal. We'll make the best deal.
Yes. However, I want to point this out again. This is not a temporary tool. There are people that have proposed doing that, and I think that's probably the best argument in favor of tariffs, is that they're a form of temporary leverage.
They're instant leverage, and we are a big fish that is under leveraged.
But that's not what tariffs or what Trump's been saying the last 20, 30 years. I mean, literally in the last month, he said tariffs. Hold on, I've got the quote in front of me because I wanted to confirm that.
And this is the problem with Trump, as you pull it up, is that also it's like he's in this weird superposition where it's like, do we take him letter of the
right,
at the syllable serious, or is it like, yeah, he was up and he said some shit, and that's what it is.
He's said this one so many times that I believe that he thinks this is smart.
Very pro-tariff. He just said tariffs are the greatest thing that's ever been invented. Direct quote, exact quote from Donald Trump. Tariffs are the greatest thing that's ever been invented. The pro-tariff argument, the economic argument in favor of tariffs is, look, you want tariffs to make it to balance out competition so that domestic manufacturing can compete with cheaper international manufacturing. And if you erect higher tariffs, it will build up American industry and we will have a stronger economy. That's the argument to be made. I think it's a very bad argument, and I think we've got 300 years of data on it that proves that it's a bad argument. But that tends to be where it's coming from, and that's where Donald Trump is. He thinks that tariffs are inherently good. He's a protectionist. He wants to build up American industry by putting barriers on trade coming into the United States. That has not been the case historically, even under the Trump years. The things that he was putting tariffs on, like steel, the jobs stayed the same. They didn't increase. Like the money that was lost to the country was noticeable. So I don't think that it would be a temporary thing where he'd go, I did it. I think he wants to raise the tariffs, and he thinks that will benefit the country.
We don't have free trade, right? So free trade agreement doesn't have to be more than one sentence in length, but these are not free trade deals, but managed trade deals in which the participants use trade agreements to pick winners and losers in their respective economies and engage in diplomacy by other means. Capital formation, which is essential to job creation, is distorted by managed trade and complicated tax law. Explaining the links between tax policy, trade policy, and capital formation and job creation to your average undecided voter is an impossible task, so we get the current metagame, which is why everybody should pay attention to Justin.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, I'm clearly on the very free trade side of this, but I don't disagree that it's not pristine, pure, and simple. It's convoluted and involves a lot of awful favors and selective industries. I mean, there's a reason that we have all of these targeted tariffs. We don't have I had a listener propose to me, I thought it was a really interesting idea, that we just have a national tariff lever. That's it. Just everything is charged the same amount, and we argue about it during presidential elections. Do we want it 2%, 6%, whatever? I'm kind of leaning towards that idea. No, we do it. It's very, very specific. It's targeted. Our tariffs disproportionately hurt developing world countries and industries. Like we tend to target shirts, shoes, things like that. We don't do them as much on luxury items, so Europe doesn't hate us. But there's all sorts of political bullshit that goes into this process. But I should note, none of that precludes the underlying reality of comparative advantage and efficiency that come from open free markets, and that's the direction we should be going.
Riots are more fun, right? Why are the Democrats focused on the January 6th riot? I think it's obvious. It's way more photogenic than Trump shenanigans. No one's going to be motivated by B-roll footage of paperwork and silhouettes. You already know this, too. It scared the shit out of them. Them. I think he's talking about Democrats here, or politicians. If the rioters had actually been violent and set on overthrowing the government, it's the heads of the Democratic politicians that would have rolled first. I might be cynical, but vilifying Trump is a secondary goal. The primary is to send a message to all of us. If we threaten the safety of Congress people, they will show no mercy. It's politicians doing what they do best, protecting their own asses.
Yeah, I didn't think of it that way. But yeah, that makes sense to me.
Oh, I knew for the second that happened, I'm like, all of you're all going to jail forever.
And they have hunted each and every one of them down.
Like, I am sympathetic to, I think everybody who was in the Capitol, broke into the Capitol, did any kind of damage, you should face some kind of punishment. There should be a punishment for that. But like, there are people that are still in jail, 4 years later. Like, say what you will about whatever that was. Like, I don't know if anybody should be in jail 4 years later for that.
It depends on the amount of damage they do. Well, so a lot of them are in jail for hitting police officers, assault. So yeah, I mean, I think
what is the sentence for assaulting an officer?
Pretty high. It's pretty high.
Yeah, it's not short.
Is it?
I think that once the people that hurt actual people, I'm not sure that they're being judged too harshly, but there are people that merely walked into the building that have been put in cages.
Yeah, and they're like, and this is where I think I'm probably harsher than both of you when it comes to this, but I will acknowledge that there were a bunch of people that just walked in the back that probably did just think that they were participating in a protest, and the burden of law is on the side of the innocent, of presumption of innocence, right? So unless you can specifically prove that an individual was doing this blatantly illegal act that's violent, and so on and so forth, then you have to default on the position that they thought they were protesting.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a don't pick a fight with people who buy ink by the barrelful kind of thing, though. Like, don't break into the office of the people that make laws, because they will use the law to punish you in a severe way.
Throw the book at you.
Exactly. Riots multiply says the reason why people don't care about January 6th as a riot was that it was a single riot that followed a year of the left burning and ransacking cities, not just in the U.S. like Seattle, Minneapolis, and Portland, but also across Europe. It rings hollow when they clutch their pearls over a single incident on a single day in a single city following the dozens of pillages that occurred over the course of months in numerous states and countries.
Maybe I'd want to see it's an interesting point. I'd want to see the data on that. I've just,
do you not remember the?
No, I remember it, but I don't. Yeah, it's hard for me to contextualize all of it.
Of this, like the left burning and ransacking cities, as if those protests were all super violent and that there weren't millions of people that hit the streets and that weren't violent and were actually protesting the fact that black people are treated unfairly. We had a reason to fucking protest.
Yeah, sure, but I don't think he's saying that.
The left.
But is he saying the left ransacked? Do you think that there was a centrist or right-leaning element to the BLM riots?
I think there were definitely people that vote Republican that were out in the streets as well. I don't think this was just the left that were pissed that an American citizen and had a cop sit on his neck for fucking 8 minutes.
But the rioting, but like the destruction.
I think the rioting was overwhelmingly done by white people of upper middle class disposition in their late 20s or early 30s.
Yeah, like anarchist type dipshits. Like, I don't know. I don't like it when we frame stuff as like the right or the left. Like, it's.
You literally just said the Republicans are killing the planet in our first block.
And this is exactly. Do you not remember how I couched that? Because I said that it wasn't. I mean, I don't like that people are voting for Republicans if they give a hot shit about climate change, but I am reading bills by individuals written in a certain party, and every single one of them keep voting for these bills. So yes, the Republicans,
okay, there we go,
in Congress,
in the center of the earth,
are making the problem worse. It is a demonstrable fact. I have 12 years worth of data for you.
But you don't like it when people say the left do it.
No, I don't. And I didn't say that it's the right that is causing climate change. I said there are specific individuals. There's 535 individuals in Congress that have the power to change laws. That's different than saying the left. Because I guess why I get annoyed by this is that if you say the left is burning and ransacking cities, you're probably talking about me. And I'm just kind of like, fuck you, I didn't do that.
So you're taking it personal.
Yeah, I think that when you...
Were you burning and ransacking?
When you brand half of the country based on some bullshit like box that you're putting in people like right or left. Like people would put Andrew in the right box. Are you trying to burn down the planet? No.
I
trying to burn down
refuse
cities?
to let a bunch
No.
of goddamn dead Frenchmen define my paradigm. I fucking refuse. I don't think at any point in this program have I ever used left or right as a descriptor. Have I?
Neither have I.
Yeah.
And it annoys me when
Never do it.
But you
Other people
say
do.
that you assume people think that you are left. That's why you reacted like that.
I don't like it. Don't think it's helpful, and I don't like the branding of those protests as merely like, oh, the left went wild, burning and ransacking cities, as if that is what people were trying to do out there. Like there were a reason behind the protest.
Sure. Again, I would like to separate any of the people who were protesting the death of George Floyd and police brutality writ large from
Rioters, looters.
Looters. Like they did exist. We know that.
I didn't say that it didn't exist, but the tone of this email makes it seem like
That
we were
he's-
just
that
out there
he's talking
burning
about-
and ransacking and not.
That he's talking about the protesters as well. That's what you read into
Yeah.
that as. Okay.
Yeah, I do.
there
And
we go.
it's the left doing it, whatever the fuck the left means. It's just, I find it icky.
Tell me who to vote for, Riots. Who should I vote for president? Gloria Young or Chase Oliver, and why? Justin, your advice is particularly important since you've had both on the podcast. I would say vote for my mom because Chase Oliver didn't birth me.
I disagree with that. I think you should vote for Chase Oliver because every vote for a third party, if you're not voting for a Democrat or Republican, helps them with ballot access and with fundraising next time.
Like that. I would vote against that. Voted for my mom, man. Vote for my mom. My
I
mom's cool.
think
You know
I'm-
my mom.
I do
You've
know
heard
your
my
mom.
mom.
I think I'm
I
going to
would
go
like
with
for her
yeah.
to be president.
I'm going to go with
but-
Jen on this, but I'll put a little bit of a spin on it. If you find it really, 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 really funny to vote for Justin's mom,
Yeah.
it might be worth it to you individually in terms of psychic utility to vote for her.
Yeah.
But in terms of electoral outcome, for sure, vote Chase Oliver.
Look, it's the job of politicians to sway you to vote for them. They have
when
never
did-
had a better chance to do that.
And what is Dear Gloria's platform?
Don't fucking vote for me. That's her platform.
And that's
But
why
that proves why she deserves the office. She rejects it. She's the true Mahdi. So modest. On PX.
Wait, can I pause you? I think this is fun history.
Yeah.
Like, like we talk about not whistle stop campaigns, but like a front porch campaign or something. Do you know the term I'm talking about in American history?
Rose Garden.
No, well, like for a really long time in American history, the presidential candidates would always run from their porch.
Yeah.
And the reason that they did that was that there was this rhetorical paradigm everybody operated in of, I have been drafted.
Yes.
I do not wish to run for office, but you have come to my home and you have asked me to run, and I against my judgment, I've decided to, like Cincinnatus, I have been called. You can go back and look at John Quincy Adams and look at the how he was analyzing his loss to Andrew Jackson, and he's outright campaigning. He's asking people for their votes like he's some kind of whore asking for their votes. Could you imagine? It's like you read it and you're like, you poor bastard. Like you never understood politics. And if it ever existed that way, it's gone. It's so gone.
Yeah. Nepo baby tears. On PX3 this week, we've got a great show, great series of shows. Tom LoBianco, who wrote a biography about Mike Pence, makes an impassioned plea for him to tell his full January 6th story in light of Jack Smith's unsealed filings. And we came up with my 4 scenarios. You guys remember during our 2022
like Dark Brandon and
coverage.
stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, so I've unveiled them.
Okay. Ooh.
I can give them to you now, but listen to our conversation with Evan Scrimshaw on the show.
Can you give me a taste?
Yeah, here are the 4. Do you want to go good news for Democrats first or good news for Republicans first?
Either dealer's choice.
Okay. Pax MAGA is the top for Republicans. That's a Trump win, a GOP Senate, and a GOP House. Throw in a weird like Virginia goes red kind of thing there. That's a Trump electoral college victory. He's the first Republican since George W. Bush to do it. We have radically realigned both parties.
Popular vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. He wins the popular vote. This is the end cap to his reshaping of American politics that began when he came down that golden escalator. One step below that, Democratic Civil War. Trump barely wins the Electoral College, loses the popular vote. GOP takes the Senate, but the Democrats take the House, which is the worst of all scenarios for the Democrats because it will prove that the Democratic brand was popular. It was the people up top that totally fucked it up and mismanaged it, which means we are going to open the hellgates on what has been brewing in the Democratic Party for the last 12 years, and that is full civil war where they're going to determine what the coalition is going forward in the same way that the Republicans did with Trump back in 2016. Democrats have kind of kept a lid on it. It's kind of like been barely held together with spit and duct tape.
I might finally get my Whig party rebooted. If I can get like the disaffected Democrats and the Never Trumpers to come together and reboot the Whig party with me.
On the good side of the Democratic coin, unbound by what has been, that is a narrow Kamala Harris win. That is a GOP Senate win because the map is very favorable to them, and a Democratic House win. This means that everything stays the same. You want to know what? They turns out Biden, a great, amazing president, did a great, amazing thing by stepping down, and brilliant, true political savant Kamala Harris stepped right in there and saved the Republic and vanquished Donald Trump. We continue with all of the hagiography that we have built up over the last 6 months. Congratulations. Now that is going to extend for the next 4 years. And then the best case scenario for Democrats, Roe sends her regards. Harris wins all of the swing states. Texas comes really close. Colin Allred wins all of the Senate swing states, erase a very favorable Republican map, and the Democrats win the White House. They keep the Senate. They keep the House. It is all full true blue. They can now use the filibuster to restore Roe. This is the greatest bounty of all time. The Democrats, true blue, vanquish Trump to the shadow realm. That is Roe sends her regards. The 4 scenarios that we will have all of our guests on PX3 make their guesses on what they think is most likely. And during the live coverage of election night, we will find a creative way. Last time we had gigantic boards that I karate chopped and kicked when they became not likely to happen. We will do that again on our coverage this week. And also, because I haven't talked enough about myself, PX3 is now on Substack. We went from Patreon to Substack. If you were a patron on that show, then please check your email. Politics is now on Substack is the email. You're able to get exactly what the level you were at in terms of benefits on Substack. You get a free month worth of coverage there. We would just ask you to switch your payment information onto Substack. Thank you to everybody who has done that so far. No, the number one question I get is We're Not Wrong happening? Not my fucking decision. I'm only 1/3 of We're Not Wrong. So that's the answer to that. There we go. Heaton.
I have a motherfucking book out.
Hey!
It's called Tribalism is Dumb, Where It Came From, How It Got So Bad, and What to Do About It. Let me ask you a question, listeners. Do you not enjoy that there's 3 people with big personalities and very distinct political opinions on this program who love each other and get along? Do you not like that? Surely you do. That's why you enjoy this, right? I'm going to infer that you are probably a bit bothered by the rancor in our country at this time, and that you like me, have thought that politics has become considerably worse over the last 10 years, and you'd like to go in a different direction. I certainly do. So I've been working for the last 7 years on this book. I have been combing through sociological research and evolutionary history, all sorts of stuff, and I'm putting it together and adding jokes so that you can read a palatable version of that. If you buy this book, which you can do on Amazon in Kindle form or Audible form that I narrate myself, or in paperback form, I think you will understand why people act partisan and nasty to each other much better than you currently do. At the very least, the world will be less baffling to you, but maybe you'll feel a bit better and you'll understand how to interact with people in your own life, be a little bit more sympathetic and a little bit less attacked and defensive. So check out Tribalism is Dumb by yours truly, Andrew Heaton.
Jan?
It was a damn good ad, Andrew Heaton.
Thank you. I got really warmed up last night on Great Night. I came over and like I thought I was going to do funny games, and then Justin and Brian at the end would be like, "By the way, tell us about your book." They were overwhelmingly generous and just like let Heaton talk for 45 minutes, and I got pretty good at polishing that pitch by the end.
There you go.
I'm very, very proud that you have gotten this out. I know you've worked on it for a very long time, and I cannot wait to listen to it. I bought it on Audible last night.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to use the credit for it.
Thank you. I appreciate it, gang.
And the latest episode of Congressional Dish is my study guide for the election. We have a law and a bunch of bills from both the House and the Senate that are like single issue. So you can go ahead and judge if those votes would align with you before you decide whether or not to rehire these people to Congress. But I also want to point out that if you're someone who can't stand me, because I know you exist in this audience, that's fucking fine. But go to episode number 301 of Congressional Dish, because you have everything you need there. So I told you what's in all of the bills. That's all written out. You have the links to the votes, everything you need. So if you don't want to hear from me anymore, that's fine, but you can still use the study guide on congressionaldish.com.
You sound like me a year ago, where I was frequently making pitches of like, okay, for people that hate me, this episode's less of the shit you hate. So yeah. We come full circle.
Yeah, you don't have to deal with me for this one.
I think no one really hates you.
That's fine.
No,
I hope that's true.
No, of course it is.
I'll say you know what, when I do whiskey tipples with my top tier patrons, gin briny is a frequent topic of conversation, but everybody likes you. Everybody likes you and like often disagrees with you, but they think that you're very intelligent and they enjoy being challenged. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where the people that disagree with you, I think where their heart is I really like this person and she makes me think, but I still disagree with her. But I don't think they hate you.
I hope not.
Because they think you're hot.
No one watches the videos.
Yeah, they do.
Really?
Yeah.
I know my dad does.
Yeah.
Hi, Ralph.
Hey, Mr. Clark.
So, till next time, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young for Andrew Heaton and Jen Briney saying, we're not wrong.
But you are.
You are.
Oh, no. It's
You got it.